Hey guys, enter the stars, and God is simply amazing. In researching further into the dung beetle, just after the video that I just put up about the scarab beetle, I'm finding some fascinating subject matter on the colorization of these beetles. Now, what I'm talking about is circularly polarized light. In other words, the light is made of structure. The color is made of structure, not of pigment. Now here's one amazing example of how this is demonstrated. This is a berry, and this berry has some of the most intense color in the world. Why? Because the structure of it is like millions of tiny mirrors reflecting light back at you. When you change your position, your viewpoint, looking at these berries, it can actually change colors. Now, there are some diagrams here that demonstrate how this works. Light comes in through a surface material, reflects off of an internal material, and comes back at your eye. Now these can be layered in several layers with different plants and animals throughout God's kingdom. Here's another example of how this works. Multiple layers, single layers. But there always seems to be one rule. A background of dark pigment is necessary for us to see this. The backdrop. And that reminds me of the night sky. Now, how did we find this? How did we stumble upon this? We were examining the scarab beetle and noticing how the reflection, the structure, the makeup of the night sky at the equator, spinning in opposite directions to your left and right view, but going straight up and down in the middle at the equator of Earth, was similar to the makeup of the scarab beetle and also the images we are given by ancient Egypt. And we noticed how there were two lenses depicted in what we are shown that seemed to mimic the spoon reflections. So we have a spoon here, the inside of a spoon, and a spoon here, the outside of a spoon. And when you look into the outside of a spoon, we'll just imagine that this is it here. We notice that this image of the scarab beetle seems to mimic the image that we would see in the night sky of the spoon. Now I'm explaining this further because this was a little confusing on the last video. I understand that sometimes we need the commentary to go along with the explanation of this. But this is the night sky seen at the equator. Let's minus this, and maybe this will be a little easier to understand. Right in the middle of the sky, at the equator, the stars move in one direction, vertically. If you were to use time-lapse photography over the course of the entire night, they would move perfectly vertically in the sky. But when you look to the right in the sky, remember, standing in the equator, the stars will move in a circular direction. But when you look to the left of the sky, they move in the opposite direction as the stars in the right of the sky. So we deduced that maybe we were seeing some kind of reflection. And that's when I began to look into the spoon. And when you look into a spoon, one image is concave and one is convex. And when you look at the convex spoon, it flips your image. You can try this with any shiny silver spoon. Look at it and the image is flipped. But when you flip the spoon around, you see yourself right side up. So then I began to think and search, which is what we do on this channel, for the truth. We might not get it right, but we are searching, presenting the synchronicity so you yourself can decide what the truth is. That's what this is about. And I realized something very bizarre, that this scarab beetle, we are seeing a spoon here and a spoon in this direction here. So we're seeing this image, this same thing, in which spiraling something this way would move it in one direction here, but if you flip the spoon around, it would move in the other direction. And if you were standing directly in the center, it would be perfectly vertical. And that's the amazing, fascinating thing about this scarab beetle and how it's depicted here in this ancient artifact and many hieroglyphics with two opposing spoons, images, which of course gives us what we would see in the night sky, which simply blew me away. The majesty of God's creation. Now, back to circularly polarized light. Let's take a look. Now, when we say circularly polarized light, that reminds me of what we are seeing in the night sky at the equator, in which a backdrop of complete darkness is necessary to make out this structural light, according to this man here. The backdrop, the final layer of darkness, is needed, and that is outer space. Now, how does this work? It works with films and thin layers, the upper water firmament, and how light is reflected. We talked all about that in a couple videos ago. And this is amazing. This is the fractured surface of some of these films. And when the light shines through and shines back, it structurally gives a different color. Now, pigment works in much of the same way, except that it only reflects back one color. That's the difference between pigment and structural color. Structural color uses its structure and reflection like a bunch of tiny mirrors to block and change what your eye is seeing. So from different angles, the color can change. It's simply amazing. Now, the scarab beetle has this quality. It's one of the few animals in the animal kingdom that can do this most efficiently. These berries also fall under that category, as well as the peacock, some squid, and they're actually trying to use this technology for camouflage in the military. They're developing it right now. It's also used by the insides of seashells. That's where we get the seashells, and we've done some work on the heliotrope that is derived from the Hexaplex trunculus seashell that makes a purple, a royal purple, and a royal blue color. Now, here are some other examples of animals in the animal kingdom that have varying degrees of this ability of circularized polarized light. And what this does is it further implicates those in control, the evil one, of knowing this knowledge, knowing what is going on, but hiding this information from us and trying to use it to elevate themselves as gods, the ancient Egyptians, namely. We see this in their hieroglyphs. They knew the secret, and almost in every instance, we see the two lenses, with this one giving it away, with the bottom lens being the opposite side of the spoon. You'll more easily understand this by using a spoon and looking at the image, highly polished spoon, and this will tell you what the night sky is doing. They give themselves away because they think that we're not smart enough to figure it out. And the evil one wants to be like the Most High. Now, this links all the way back into the work we did on Nut, the sky goddess, the canopy of stars. Another example of them trying to take credit all the way back to ancient Egypt for the masterpiece of God's work. And then the people being subjected to that because they are worshiping the false gods, the people that didn't create this, but the ones that are trying to take credit for it and seeing this as awe and wonder. And this is what enrages the Most High, because the people that are in subjection to the ancients were sacrificed, killed in war. The war god Wepwawet, who delighted in sending men on through to their deaths in the cycle of the Ouroboros. Now this is going to blow you away, and I believe that we are very close to the ultimate truth. And now I want you to imagine that you were standing inside the mirror sphere on the flat, dome-shaped Earth, and that the equator would be a central circular line around the lens of your eyeball. And at that point, you would see perfectly the night sky. And that as you went up in the northern latitudes, the sky would start to spin inside the mirror sphere in one direction. And as you went down in the southern hemisphere, towards the edges of the ring of the dome Earth, the sky would spin in the opposite direction, because the sky is a giant mirror. And now we can begin to understand why the ancient Egyptians used the sign of Ra's eye as their symbol, because the middle of your eye holds the secret to the universe. And this is the night sky at the equator, the central part of the lens of the eye, circumnavigating the very middle portion of this bulb. And I believe that this quite possibly could be the answer to all of our questions, you guys. The only way to reproduce this experiment is to make a giant room that is shaped like a mirror, and make a platform shaped like this lens, and to stand on it at different points, to stand here and see if in fact we are seeing the image, and then to stand at the top and see if things are spinning in one direction, and then to stand at the edge and see if things are spinning the opposite direction. And I believe that if we can do that experiment, that we can then prove the structure of the universe. Take care and be safe, you guys.